Carl and Liam here from Brrraains A Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and it's video game track by track as we are delving into the soundtrack of the original Fable game. Of course, Fable, the original release back in 2004, developed by Lionhead Studios and published by Microsoft for the original Xbox 3, well, Xbox 360, and it's been re-released. I think it had a, I don't know if it was a HD version or not an outright remake, but it was a version they released later that was kind of tarted up a bit
to commemorate the anniversary, maybe the 10-year anniversary of the game's
release. You're right, it was called Fable Anniversary. You're right, it was.
Yeah, it was just simply a HD reskin. It wasn't really anything more than that.
Yeah, I remember it had horrendous loading times. It was really disappointing.
But it was cool to replay the game with achievements included and things like that. So it was enjoyable for what it was.
Indeed. And this is one of those not necessarily really rare events, because these will happen more and more as we go forward. But this is one of the few modern, if you want to call it modern, because of I'm sort of thinking the Microsoft consoles and onwards, that kind of thing. Games that I feel incredibly nostalgic for. I have a lot of nostalgic love, not just for Fable, the original, but probably the Fable series overall. I've always enjoyed them, even with all their flaws. I've just like a lot of us, I'm of a certain age, so I fell for a lot of Peter Molyneux's bullshit back in the day. Who didn't? I mean, everybody did. But I've got a lot of love for it. So the soundtrack is always immediately familiar to me. In fact, during the period where Fable came out, I wasn't really playing games. While I did have the original Xbox, there was only a handful of games I actually played on that. And this was one of them. So that's a thing for me as well.
Yeah, I think anyone that owned the original Xbox, this was without a doubt the game you would probably most likely have on it that you would have played, because it was probably one of the more well-known releases on the console. Yeah, I have a lot of strong memories towards it as well, a lot of nostalgia. Probably the first Xbox game I played too. So yeah, there's a lot of strong memories there. And I agree that Fable had its flaws as it went along, but I think the original one, it didn't perfectly nail everything, like you said, that Peter Molyneux claimed it would. I think one of his biggest claims was that if you planted a seed, it would grow into a tree and blah blah blah, it would grow from there, and it would be some long running thing. But I think it did revolutionize a lot of certain ideas that games would use going forward and whatnot. So it was cool for that. But yeah, the soundtrack was fun to re-listen to, because I haven't listened to some of these things for quite a while. So it took me back.
Yeah, and it's not a particularly long one either, because it's actually got an official release. It's kind of nice and tight, about 13 tracks long. We should note as well, at the time of recording, part of the reason why this was brought back into the forefront of my memory was, of course, they have announced the return of Fable with a teaser trailer that didn't really give away much at all, but as at least made go, okay, right, let's see what you can do with Fable on the high-powered machines, you Series X. Let's push this a little bit,
I think that's where Fable was a little bit held back, because they released one after another kind of in quick succession, and the technology for what Fable could potentially be with the technology that maybe the current console has, maybe could finally reach the levels of the kind of claims that were once made about it. Whereas they did Fable 1, and then you had 2 and 3 on the 360, so they didn't really have much of a jump in technology to be able to do much more. So I think that's why they didn't do too well, because they were kind of almost pretty samey, and there weren't too much difference, and the advancement wasn't there.
You're absolutely right. Whereas I can picture a lot of Fable, the original Fable, in my head. If you'd have asked me, tell me bits or pick up bits of Fable 2 or 3, I'd be able to pull out certain things, but I couldn't tell you which game it was referring to. That's quite a big thing.
Yeah, other than the dog that you get in Fable 2, I can't relate. So I can't really differentiate between the second and third game. It's quite difficult. Yeah.
So yes, of course, the soundtrack. The soundtrack itself was released on the February 15th, 2005. The orchestral score was composed by Russell Shaw, and I'm finding this out. It all makes sense when you hear it, with Danny Elfman assisting on the main theme, and it was of course.
Half my notes are me saying that this sounds like something that is composed by Danny Elfman. It's very Burton-esque. That's half my notes. So now it makes complete sense.
There it is, yeah. The soundtrack was also performed by the Philharmonia Philharmonia Orchestra and the Pinewood Singers under the orchestration and conduction of Alan Wilson. So yes, this is a big one.
Yeah,
Okay, go on.
I didn't realize like how orchestral the soundtrack for the game was. When you go back and really listen to it, because when you're playing the game, obviously there's the more recognizable tracks. But yeah, it's performed by an orchestra, but I don't really remember it being that way necessarily in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some, we'll get to them as we go through. Okay, let's start off with Fable theme. It's exceptionally memorable and fantastical as it builds up the adventurous tension until it explodes in orchestral grandness. It's got touches of whimsy, which is to be expected. But what I actually have a problem with this track now. I like it and I don't love it. And the problem is I don't think this conveys the humor and sillier aspect that the game has. I think this theme is very much almost like too epic and it needs to calm it down when it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I thought there wasn't a piece of music that I would automatically think of when if you said Fable soundtrack. This isn't something that would jump to my mind straight away. But I do think it's a really nice piece, and I think it fits the setting of the whole hero narrative really well. And as I said, I wrote that it gave me major Danny Elfman vibes. Well, I probably can just like not say that from now on, considering he was behind it. But it gives you that sense of adventure that you'd come to experience in the game quite well, I thought. But yeah, like you said, not one that I love necessarily.
Indeed, indeed. I'm actually surprised. I thought you'd be a staunch defender of it because it is the Fable theme. So there you go.
Not my top three.
We're interested in where we match up here because Oakvale is next. And this is pure nostalgia for me. If there's one piece of music on this soundtrack that if I hear immediately goes, Fable, it's this piece of music. It's light, it's airy, it's a little bit haunting. It captures the fantastical aspect of the game nicely with an undercurrent of darkness running through it. Like you can't know what to expect around the corner, which is quite accurate for this point of the game. So it kind of works in that introduction to me. But yeah, this is just pure nostalgia for me.
Yeah, I mean, in talking of like the power of nostalgia, I think this really does capture that amazingly well. I still vividly remember running around Oakvale doing little tasks and just generally exploring and hearing this music play in the background. I love the violin use. I think it's a beautifully composed piece of music. And yeah, I think it does perfectly capture that fantasy feel and that atmosphere. And this is always one that I come back to in Fable. I don't want to give away my top three, but this is one I always come back to. So.
No, I think I would kind of convey where it might end up in the end anyway. Darkwood fits the area nicely. It's oozing gloom and feeling inherently dangerous while also being mysterious. Problem? It's just not that memorable overall.
Yeah, I like the subtle, dark, sinister tone of this one, and it feels like something straight out of Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas or even Corpse Bride. I don't know. Can only wonder why that might be. It has that twisted fairy tale feel, and I thought it built really nice in places.
Witchwood, a stronger track for me with more whimsy, feeling like something that I thought could have fitted in the PS1 game Medieval. Getting those vibes.
Did you just say that?
Yeah.
Literally, that is exactly what.
It's got a lot of the familiar Fable orchestral beats, but I don't mind that because it kind of connects all the tracks together. It's an explorative but quite a calming track too. Big fan of this one.
Yeah, we did a track by track of the PS1 classic Medieval, and this particular track really made me think of that game. So we're both on the same wavelength. It does really feel like something that would fit into that world because they both have the dark fantasy thing going on, so it does make sense. Yeah, on the whole, the soundtracks for Fable and Medieval are actually fairly more similar than I ever would have realized, which was
Mm.
quite interesting going back to listening to it. Yeah, albeit I'm not going to mention about Tim Burton and Danny Elfman again, but that's there obviously. I thought it was quite a nice subtle track, and it felt like a bit of a remix of the Oakville track, but with a witchy twist to it.
Well said. Litchfield Cemetery. All about dread here, rich in moodiness, but playing it subtle. And you get this sense of exploring a dead place, quietly moving around so as not to disturb anything. Then it has moments of warning, as though there is danger up ahead. This is cool.
Yeah, I agree. There's more subtlety, tension, and sinister undertones, as well as some very dramatic operatic vocals thrown in. Thought it was a delightful
Mm.
gothic piece of music that goes well with the cemetery environment.
It's that, isn't it? You kind of need something like this for Cemetery, and I think it nails that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm probably going to have to give one of my top three away here, but there is one track that if I ever just want to listen on the soundtrack, it comes next. It is Summer Fields. This might be the most relaxing piece of music aside from Oakville on this soundtrack. The location, when I immediately picture the location, and it's a real fond memory. The warm and summery, light and airy location, sweet and relaxing. Hearing this again, when I listened to this the other day and did my notes, I was like, I really want to go back and play Fable. That passed, obviously, because I'm not gonna. I've got the time. But yeah, just like hearing it again, I was like, oh man, I really wanted to just go back and explore that. But do you know what? Do you know also this? Not that it reminded me soundtrack wise, but do you know what also it brought into my head? And maybe again, it's just timing. But I was like, man, this reminds me of the more relaxing moments of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, the less violent moments, and the more the DLC, Blood and Wine, the
Mm,
location and how summery and pretty that is. That's what it kind of just pictured in my head. And again, it got me really
yeah.
nostalgic for want to go back and play The Witcher.
Yeah, just those calm moments where you're just walking through like a field or a
Mm.
forest, the environment, the wind's blowing and that sort of stuff. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I think the melody of this track is really memorable for anyone who has played the game, especially like the usage of what sounds like flutes here. I know we're usually giving this compliment, but I think the people behind the soundtrack did a great job of capturing that feel of the environment
Mm.
so well with the music. Yeah.
Yep, yeah, well said. Okay, we've done a few comparisons to other things, and I've got one than the next one. And we've matched up so far. Let's see if you got this as well. Bowerstone. It's another nostalgic hit, obviously very familiar. But this one weirdly reminds me of Final Fantasy IX and exploring Alexandria at the start
Mm.
of that game. It's playful and coy, but infectious and energetic. It's lovely. It's a little repetitive, does kind of go repeat its beats a little bit too regularly, but it's still a nice piece of music.
Yeah, I can completely see the comparison there. I can hear that definitely. But I thought obviously this is much like the Oakdale track in that there are a lot of fond memories associated with it. You spend so much time in Bowerstone in the game, how could there not be? But
Yeah.
on the whole, I think listening to it again, I think it's just an okay track, and minus the nostalgia, if that wasn't attached to it, then maybe it wouldn't be like held in such high regard. But I do think obviously it's an impressively put together piece of music creatively, so I can't criticize that aspect.
No, fair enough. Right, start hitting the latter part of the album where maybe there's less memorable ones or there's a little bit less, a little bit more laziness going on. We got Arena. It nails the fight feel. The thumping percussion, horn section, and rumbling beat feels very dangerous. It's a cool track.
Hmm. I thought this was a surprisingly intense track, and yeah, I thought if this doesn't make you feel like you're stuck in some kind of hellish battle, then I'm not sure what will.
Mm, perfect for something called Arena.
Hmm.
Okay, Temple of Light. This is another really relaxing listen. Perhaps the lightest tone of the entire soundtrack. It's got an otherworldliness that stands out more than anything else.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought this was a nice, calming change of pace from the previous track. I really like the soft, dreamlike melody used here. It made me think of the type of music that you would hear if you opened like an old-timey music box.
Hmm.
So it gave me that kind of feel, yeah.
Yeah, like a sort of makeup box with a thing that pops up and spins around.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Hobbs Cave, another of the sense of danger tracks. The idea being to make you feel on edge, but not particularly uncomfortable. It's got plenty of dread in it, but this is very forgettable for me. I didn't even really remember it when it started playing.
Yeah, I thought this one started very slowly, but I did build into something quite epic, I thought. But again, I mentioned how this made me really think of Tim Burton's Batman specifically.
Oh,
Give me that kind of
wow.
feel. Yeah.
Okay, Great Wood. The whimsy is back, but mixed with darkness around the edges. I'm getting some of that late game medieval vibes again, but it's not too strong in this one compared to how it was earlier on. I like this one. It's fine.
Yeah, I thought this was a wonderfully plucky track and it got my mind racing with imagery. I love the usage of bells in this track.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. I like highlighting that.
Mm.
And then we've got Guild. This is a long offering. If you look at the runtime, you're like, okay, this is really long. But that's kind of the point to that, as it features a strong male vocal choir that changed their tone bit by bit across the song. The stop-start aspect of it, though, is a little annoying. But I do like how you can hear elements of other Fable music in the voices. So they're kind of like the choir going, oh, like that. It's actually other bits of Fable music.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned in one of the previous tracks, it's hard to criticize the like creativity behind it and the talent behind it and that sort of thing. But so I thought they did actually nail the track in terms of giving you the sense that you're part of something really ancient and important. But yeah,
Mm.
it's not one that you maybe remember that well from playing the game kind of thing.
I mean, it was quite memorable, but tying it to, because we have to tie into the last track on this soundtrack because of what it is. I didn't realize, because when this came up and I saw Fresco Dome, I actually had to go and check because I was like, is this just an added thing on the playlist I'm looking? I don't know what this is and so on until I heard it and I was like, oh, right, okay, this is why. Because it's basically the same as Guild, but with female choir voices. It's an
Yeah.
interesting idea, but it's the same track effectively. So it and Guild go together. But yeah, like there's nothing other than being like it's a cool idea. It's like, oh, all right, I don't remember where they played. I don't remember why they did it differently. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to change it. You get female vocalists instead of male. I think it's a very powerful and moving, and again delivers that sense of importance really well. But like you said, it kind of blurs into the previous track a bit because it's exactly the same. Just yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's it. That is the official soundtrack for Fable. And is it, immediately when I was doing this, I was like, well, we'll definitely do 2 and 3 in the future. And then I looked at 2 and I was like, wait a minute, that's like 50 odd tracks. What's going on there? What changed? What changed?
Yeah, that's quite a big jump.
Yeah, I might actually have to look into that to make sure it's not just here's 3 seconds of a sound effect and that's considered a track and stuff like that.
Yeah, like a dog barking or something.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Okay, I think there's a real risk, a real chance that we might have the 3 same top tracks here.
I don't
We
think
might.
so. I don't think
So
so.
I'm gonna. Okay. Well, all right. We might have 2 of them then at least. All right, I do mine then. Okay, first I have got Oakvale. I have Summerfields, and the third one is Witchwood.
Okay, yep, you're right on the first 2. Oakville, Summerfields, and I went for Greatwood on the last one.
Oh, okay. All right.
I
Okay.
did that one. Yeah, that's
Oh,
it.
that's really late game one as well. Oh, there you
Yeah.
go. That's it. That's Fable's official soundtrack. You got any thoughts? You know what to do. Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?